ever tried learning a new language as an adult? It can feel like hitting a wall, right?
That really can.
Like some people just seem to soak up new languages no problem, but then you're stuck like wrestling with verb conjugations or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're definitely not alone there.
So for today's deep dive, we're going to explore a hidden factor that might just be the key to like unlocking your inner polyglot.
That's right. We're diving into this whole world of auditory processing and how it really impacts your ability to learn a new language.
Okay, auditory processing. I'm going to be honest, it sounds a little technical to me.
It does. It does.
So how'd you break that down?
It's actually simpler than it sounds, honestly. Basically, it's all about how your brain analyzes the sounds that it hears. So think of it this way. You're hearing sounds all the time, right?
Yeah.
But your brain doesn't just stop at, oh, okay, there's noise. It's actually doing all this work in the background.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out what those sounds are, how they're different from each other and what they mean. All of that, that's auditory processing in action.
So it's not just like my ears like physically picking up sounds, but about how good my brain is at like deciphering all those little subtle differences between sounds.
Exactly. And that becomes especially crucial when we're talking about learning a new language.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, because every language, right, it has its own unique set of sounds, its own rhythm, its own melody.
It's true. And I think a lot of people listening are probably nodding their heads right now thinking, yeah, there's got to be something more to this than just, aptitude or how much you immerse yourself. So is there?
Well, there might be.
Okay, tell me more.
This is where the research of Saito comes in.
Okay.
He's from University College London.
Good.
And his 2023 paper in language teaching basically suggests that, that whole thing about having a good ear, it's not just for musicians.
Right.
This could be your secret weapon for language learning. Yeah, Saito, he argues that people with more precise auditory processing, or basically a better ear, they're just better equipped to pick up new languages. And the evidence is actually pretty fascinating.
Okay, you've piqued my interest. I'm hooked. What kind of evidence are we talking?
So there was one study, right? It looked at Greek speakers who were trying to learn English vowels, and then separately, Mandarin speakers trying to learn Cantonese tones.
Okay.
The people who were better at detecting those tiny, tiny differences in sounds, they actually ended up having better pronunciation after they went through intensive training.
Wow. So it's not just about like how much you practice, but it's also about how well your brain is able to like pick up on those subtle variations in the first place.
That's exactly it. And, to take it a step further, Saito actually found that auditory processing, this was a better predictor of long-term success for Japanese speakers learning English than traditional aptitude tests.
Okay, that's kind of mind-blowing. I mean, how does this whole auditory processing thing actually work in the brain?
That's a good question.
Yeah, like are we talking about our ears physically changing or is it something else entirely?
It's more about your brain becoming a sharper sound processor, if that makes sense. Not necessarily your ears themselves transforming. You know those sounds that learners often stumble over?
Oh, yeah.
Like for English speakers learning Spanish, the rolled R or tones in Mandarin for a lot of people.
Oh, tell me about it.
Those have always been my nemesis.
Yeah, those are tough.
Well, those challenges, they often come down to how well your brain can actually distinguish and then reproduce those really specific sounds.
So if I'm understanding this right, it's like our brains are basically learning to crack a complex auditory code. And the better we get at decoding those subtle little sonic cues, the faster we learn the language.
You've got it. That's a great way to put it.
Okay, cool. So I can totally see that. But be honest, does this mean that we're kind of hardwired for language success, or are some of us doomed to struggle? I mean, Tell me there's hope for, us late bloomers out there.
There's definitely hope. While natural ability, it definitely plays a role, Saito's research suggests that we're not stuck with the auditory processing that we're born with.
Okay, good.
Just like any other skill, honestly, you can train it, you can improve it over time.
That is seriously good news. So how do we actually do that? Do we need special ear training equipment or?
You don't need anything too fancy.
Okay, good.
But we can unpack some practical tips.
So no fancy gadgets or anything. That's good to know.
Nope, not at all. Improving your auditory processing, it can really be as simple as incorporating some fun exercises into what you're already doing.
Okay, so what kind of exercises are we talking about? Give me the inside scoop.
Think of it like going to the gym, but for your ears.
I like it.
There are actually tons of websites and apps out there now that are dedicated to these auditory training exercises.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and you'll find things like distinguishing between similar sounds, identifying patterns and tones, even stuff that challenges your brain with these increasingly complex sound combinations.
So we're really training our brains to be like these super detectives of sound, zeroing in on those little differences that help us with language.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Sharpening those skills that we need to really master a new language. And the best part is you can actually make it fun.
Okay, good. Because I was picturing beeps and boops. Not super fun.
It's not all beeps and boops, I promise.
Okay, good.
There are exercises that'll use music, spoken word, even nature sounds. So it's engaging.
Oh, I love that. Okay, that's cool. But what about those of us, and I'm definitely including myself here, what about those of us who aren't really into brain training apps? Are there other ways to kind of flex those auditory muscles, just in everyday life?
For sure. Think about the ways you're already engaging with the language you're trying to learn.
Yeah.
When you're listening to music in that language, really trying to tune in to the pronunciation, the intonation, the rhythm of the words.
That's a good point, because I think a lot of times we listen to music kind of passively, We're not really paying attention to the details of the sounds.
Exactly. Instead of having it on in the background, actually make a conscious effort to truly hear the sounds, the way the words are connected, the rise and fall of the melody.
Okay, so it's like a small shift in perspective, but it makes a big difference. What else?
Watching movies or TV shows in your target language, that can be another really great way to just kind of immerse yourself in the sounds.
Yeah.
And, don't be afraid to use subtitles at first, especially if you're just starting out. But try to really focus on connecting those written words with the spoken sounds.
So it's not just about following the storyline.
Right.
It's about actively listening to how native speakers are using the language,
Right.
the rhythm, the intonation, all those things that we've been talking about.
Yes, exactly. All those subtle cues that really kind of make a language come alive. you know?
Yeah, totally. And I feel I don't know about you, but I feel I really underestimate the power of just conversation. If you have the opportunity to chat with native speakers,
Yeah.
even for a few minutes, really focus on their pronunciation, their intonation, their rhythm, all of that. It's amazing how much we tune out in regular conversations.
We do.
We're so focused on what we're going to say next
Okay.
that we often miss just the richness of how the other person is speaking.
It's so true. And, by actively listening, not just to what's being said, but how it's being said, you're giving your brain this workout, essentially.
Totally. It's like a free language learning class.
Exactly.
Just built into your day.
Exactly.
This is all so fascinating. I have to say, you've got my brain going. Saito's research, though, it focuses a lot on those individual sounds, right? Like we were talking about before, the consonants or the tones. What about the bigger picture, the music of a language?
Oh, that's interesting.
The intonation, the rhythm, the stress, all those things that really make a language unique.
You're hitting on a really important point because you're right. Saito's work, it primarily focuses on those really foundational sounds.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder, what if we could take it a step further? What if we could train our ears to recognize those subtle rises and falls in intonation that convey emotion, or those pauses and stresses that native speakers use to signal importance or whatever?
It's the difference between just reading the words on a page versus a seasoned actor delivering those lines, right? You need that musicality to really bring it to life.
100%.
Right, you need that music to make the language really sing.
It's true. And think about how much information is actually conveyed just through your intonation.
Oh, so much.
A really simple phrase, right? You're going out tonight. But depending on how you say it, it could be curiosity, it could be skepticism, even disapproval. Just in those subtle ways we change our tone.
And that's not even touching sarcasm. Sarcasm is all about intonation.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And we need more research on this for sure. But it makes sense intuitively, right?
It does.
If we can train our ears to pick up on those bigger musical elements of a language, it's going to have a big impact, both on how well we understand it and how fluently we speak it.
Right, because you could be grammatically perfect on paper.
Totally.
But if you're missing that musicality, it's not going to sound natural.
No, to native speakers, you'll just sound like a robot.
Exactly. Or on the flip side, even if I make a few grammatical errors, if I can get that rhythm and intonation right, people are more likely to understand me anyway.
They will, and honestly, they'll probably connect with you more too.
It's that human element.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is so interesting. It's we overlook this crucial part of language learning because we get so stuck on the mechanics. like memorizing all the rules.
It happens all the time. We forget about the artistry.
Totally. It's like it is an art form.
It is. Think about like learning to play an instrument.
Okay, yeah.
You got to learn the technical skills. Like you have to learn the scales and the chords. But what really brings the music to life is that feeling, the expression, the rhythm, all of it.
It's the soul of the music.
Exactly.
This is giving me a whole new way to think about language learning. It's not just about memorizing.
It's only come on.
It's about opening your ears to this like whole world of sound and rhythm.
Yeah, and who knows, maybe this thing we've been talking about, this auditory processing, maybe that's the key to unlocking fluency in a way we haven't even thought of before.
It could be. It's exciting. So if you're listening to this and you're feeling inspired, right, maybe there's a language you've always wanted to learn.
Go for it.
Just remember, it's not just about the words themselves.
It's about the music behind them.
Yes. Tune into those rhythms, the intonation, all those subtle cues. That's what makes a language come alive.
And don't be afraid to experiment either.
Yeah.
Play with the sounds a little. Try to mimic how native speakers express themselves.
Have fun with it.
Exactly.
Well, on that note, that wraps up our deep dive into this fascinating world of auditory processing and language learning.
Such a cool topic.
I hope everyone listening is walking away with something new to think about.
And maybe feeling a little more motivated to keep learning.
Exactly. Maybe this helps you take your language learning to a whole new level.
Until next time, happy listening, everybody.
See you later.